and Customer Success Summit. You are currently attending Making the Business Case for Your Scaled CS Program. I'm excited to introduce our speaker today. And as I introduce them, I'm going to have them answer our icebreaker question for today, which is, what would you like to scale in your personal life? But first and foremost, I'd love to welcome Jan Young, founder and CCO of Jan Young CX. Prior to Jan Young CX, Jan was a post-sales revenue leader of 2 successfully exited tech startups. Thank you so much for being here today, Jan.
Thank you so much for asking to be here. I'm so excited about this whole summit. I just think it's fantastic, and just so many incredible speakers and sessions. So it's great to be here.
Amazing. So what would you like to scale in your personal life?
You know, I was thinking about this, and it's really my book reading, because I'd love to be able to read even more books, you know, on a bigger scale, but I want them to have an impact on me, and I want to integrate them into what I do still. And so it's really about being able to read more, but in a meaningful way. So it can't just be about reading them faster, you know, or glossing over them or something. And it still needs to be about how I integrate it into my life. So that's what I would love to scale.
I love
more
that.
books.
We have more books. Well, awesome. Before we start our session today, just wanted to remind everyone who's attending to add any questions that you have for Jan in the chat. Anything that we don't get to, we will follow up with and answer with our recording as well. So I will go ahead and let you share your screen and kick it off.
Great. Yeah, right now I can't share my screen.
Oh, no.
Oh, wait, no, I can. Good. All right, good. I am going to share it now. And good. Let me see. And I want to be sure to come over here and see the chat. All right. And make certain I can see that, because, well, anyway, so great. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming. And I want you to get ready to start typing away and that sort of thing. Put in the chat, you know, where you're from, your LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn, connect with each other on LinkedIn. That's how we always do it over in CX Exchange community. And I'd love to do that here today as well. Now, we're going to be talking about how to make your business case for your scaled CS program. And this is especially helpful for anybody who, you know, ever, you know, asked for a budget for tools and people and didn't get it, or if you're maybe even having to do cuts to your program and you're trying to figure out like how to deal with that and why are you, you know, faced with that. That's what this session is about. Okay, so about me, I actually have 20 years of experience in tech. I've done project and product management and account management, sales, marketing, CS, professional services, you name it. And that really is how I, you know, come to having a holistic approach to post-sales and SaaS growth and customer success. And that's where I focus my business with coaching, consulting, and the courses I'm building. And so if this is a topic that interests you, you might be interested in my courses, and definitely go to my website and check for my free guide. All right, let's dig in. So I'm going to really guide you through this with some questions, really a why, a what, a who, what, and a how. And specifically, why are you scaling? What are your goals? What are your company's goals? Who are your investors? What do they care about? And then how does all that lead in to making your business case? So if you want to go ahead and put in the chat, get ready to type. I want to hear about why you're scaling, okay? So why are you scaling? Is that something that, well, I can see Lawrence and Elizabeth are in the chat and ready to type. And tell me a little bit about why you're scaling. Go ahead and put it in the chat. I'm waiting, because these things are going to come from you, these next few slides. So I want to see what we have here. Okay. All right. You're extending your reach to customers. Your lower ended segment is severely neglected, right? Absolutely. So generally speaking, what I see is it kind of falls into like 3 buckets, right? So you're going to reduce your costs you're going to gain efficiencies, and you're going to increase revenue. And oftentimes when you're looking to gain your efficiencies, that is going to impact either reducing your costs or increasing your revenue. All of three things in those three buckets, though, are going to serve really helping you to achieve your business goals, right? Right. Now, in terms of your goals, and your company goals, let's first focus on your goals. And I apologize, I'm going to go through these slides quickly because I have a lot of information for you. So again, great typing, type faster, type more efficiently, because we're going to be in here going through a lot of information very quickly, but I am totally available, LinkedIn, through my website, through the follow-up, so you can follow up with me on any of these points, all right? Now, your goals, put those in the chat if you can, or write them down, but try and share either with yourself defining it or with the others what your goals are, right? And specifically, what are you trying to achieve? And now I want you to think about for your company goals, right? So for your company goals, what are, you just are thinking about and sort of writing down in your notes here what you're trying to achieve. What are your company goals? I want you to think, what is your company trying to achieve, right? Now, put those in the chat if you know them, all right? Great, thank you. Okay, we're looking at increased customer engagement, product adoption, company has some revenue goals. Makes a lot of sense, right? A lot of our companies have some increased NDR very specifically, right? Now you might be familiar with OKRs, right? Objectives and key results. And this is basically when you're connecting your goals to your company goals, right? So you look at what your company goals are, you're looking at what your objectives are. You have projects that help you meet those objectives, right? Your objectives have key results, and your projects have some sort of duration. They have milestones. They're going to be accomplished in certain periods, and then they're trying to, achieve those projects to achieve those key results that serve those objectives, that serve your company goals, right? Now, if you haven't connected your goals to your company goals, this is the first thing you need to do, but it's not enough, right? And that's where you might have been getting frustrated today, because connecting your goals to your company goals, basically that's just showing you're doing your job, right? So I'm sorry to say, that's not what's going to get you the budget or the tools that you need to do your job. Now, why is that? In order to answer why you're not getting that budget that you need, we need to move on to the next question, which is who? Who are your investors and what do they care about? We're going to start with who, right? Investors. Now you might be thinking, why do I care about my investors, right? Like, who cares, right? But they're actually impacting you every day, right? In ways you may not even think about. So the level set. VCs are looking for a 7 to 10 year return. They're generally focused on growth, right? We're going to talk about in a minute that that's changed to profitable, enduring growth, but basically VCs focused on growth, right? Now, private equity, what they're doing, they're more likely going to acquire companies, right? So they acquire a bunch of companies and then they're trying to reduce headcount. So they're trying to gain efficiencies and they're building through consolidation, right? So if you're owned by a VC or a PE, you might want to put that in the chat if you know if it's VC or PE, because that's likely going to make a difference in your goals. Now, I want to take a step back. Josh, good. So you know VC. Now, I want to take a step back and talk about something you probably have never heard before, and that's ZIRP, zero interest rate policy. And you might be thinking, wow, Jan, really? I don't know what you're talking about that for. No idea what that is. But it's actually something you've been living in. You have been living in ZIRP. That is what was responsible for the tech bubble. That was what was the source of the era of growth at any cost, which is what we've been experiencing as we got into that tech bubble, right? That's why it made more sense to throw people at a problem, right? Investors had nowhere other place to put their money because money was so cheap. They wanted to get a return on it, so they put it in a risky investment, which is investing in SaaS tech, because that's a startup, right? That's a risky investment. So they were throwing their money in there. We were flush with cash. We were throwing at people at problems. So when you think about like a report that should have been able for your customers to just run on the platform, instead CSMs are running the report and emailing it, right? Or onboarding that might have been something that they could have done themselves. Instead, you're going and making the changes, right? That's not nearly as efficient, but at that point where profitability didn't matter, that's what people were doing, right? That's what made business sense at the time. We all grew up in this era of GAC. And now we're not in this era of GAC, right? And so our behavior needs to change, right? 15 to 20 years of behavior needs to change. And that's why we really need to scale now. That's why scaling CS is what everyone's talking about and why it's in such high demand. So to illustrate some of what you've been experiencing at the top of the bubble, when you had growth at any cost, that's when we're having like literally two unicorns every day, right? Now we have zombie unicorns, right? Now we have, where there were over 3,200 VC-backed companies that failed in 2023, right? And that's where we see this era of profitable, enduring growth come in, where you need to be both profitable and grow. And that's even for the VCs. The VCs are looking for this because that's part of what they need. They have more competition for their dollars now, right? Because the interest rates went up and they can go and make money other places. So now they're looking for profitable and growing companies. And all of that changed, right? So we're already starting to see how this impact of profitable enduring growth and AI is going to have on us as we, basically every day and how we work and in our marketplace. So those are the companies, AI, native platforms and that sort of thing. Those are the companies that are getting investment. Those are the ways in which we're using some of these tools already to be more efficient, right? And all of that profitable, enduring growth, all of that efficiency is what's going to be rewarded, right? Now, that's where the demand for scaled CS is increasing and everyone is doing it. So now if everyone needs scaled CS, why don't they just give you the budget you need, right? So let's take a look at what investors care about, right? Which is then what your exec team cares about and how that's impacting you. So instead of who are your investors, let's get into what do they care about. Now, you may have heard of terms like EBITDA, Rule of 40, LTV CAC ratio. Maybe you haven't. I'm going to go through these real quickly. Is there anybody who's heard of this? So put in the chat if you've heard of EBITDA, if you've heard of Rule of 40, if you've heard of LTV, CAC ratio, any of those things. Now, these are actually all made up terms. They're made up by investors that help them figure out if they're going to invest in a company, right? That helps them figure out if they're making a good bet. Right? So EBITDA was something that was created a long time ago. And this was to sort of strip away some of these extraneous things. It's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. And they created that so they could see the health of that business and see if it's a better bet over some others, right? Now, Rule of 40 was created because when you have SaaS tech and subscription models, cloud-based companies, EBITDA didn't really help them figure out if it was a good company or not because there was so much investment needed at first. There was a loss for years in the beginning, and then it went to this hockey stick growth, right? And so because there was so much loss at the beginning and then growth later on, they needed something to capture that. And that's why Bessemer Ventures created this in 2015, Rule of 40. And basically what it's looking at is your year-over-year growth and your profit margin, and they want it to equal 40. There's variations on this, but this is where it derived from. This is where it came from, right? Now, when you're looking at LTV to CAC ratio, this is something that investors look at to see what your lifetime value is. So if you're looking here, lifetime value over the customer acquisition cost. And this is where you get in if you're in post-sales, because you impact especially the lifetime value. That's the retention, right? So if you're looking at specifically, I can give you how you calculate all these numbers, because it's kind of a complex calculation down in the lower left-hand area. And I can send you these slides if you're interested in them. But basically, this is how you get to it. The lifetime value to CAC ratio, and 3-to-1 ratio is good according to investors, and 5-to-1 is even better. That's great. But if you look in the lower left corner, what you're going to see, and sorry, I'm looking over here at the left-hand corner here, and you're going to see that part of the calculation under lifetime value is a gross margin, which is the profit or profit margin, you might hear of it as, which is revenue minus COGS. And you may not have heard of COGS, totally fine, but you're actually, it's you. So you want to know what COGS is, and I'm going to dig in, tell you all about it. This here is a sample profit and loss statement. You might also hear of it as P&L, right? This is what your CFO is reporting to your board, right? So sales and marketing and product are part of OpEx, right? And that's what you see here in the, under operating expenses. If CS is revenue generating, if you're working on expansions, or you're really closely tied to revenue, and then you might also have, let's say, either some or all of the CSM costs associated with that in the OpEx. But if your retention, anything that's retention focused, and anything that is delivery, right? That's going to be COGS. And so that's going to be also onboarding, implementation, professional services, support, and any sort of retention focused CSM work. That is all part of the cost to deliver, okay? Now, also, not all revenue is created equal. So you look up here at the revenue, and what you see is your subscription revenue, and then you're going to see your one-time fees and other types of revenue sources, right? That's what you're going to see in your total revenue. Okay, so it's possible that you're in your post-sales motion is in both areas, or you might just be in COGS. It's possible that you have revenue that is part of subscription and one-time fees, or you might be represented, say your onboarding might be all one-time fees, and so then that's all considered part of other revenue, okay? Hopefully you're following along. Is that working okay? Let me know if you have any questions. I'll try to answer them as we go, and otherwise be sure to add your questions in so we can get to them at the end. Now, you may have also heard of all of this as above and below the line, and so if you look at this, if you're looking at revenue minus COGS, which equals gross profit, that's considered above the line. You being COGS, you take away from the profit, right? So if you're wondering why they keep trying to cut costs in post-sales, it's because they're trying to look more profitable, right? And if you look at below the line, that's operating expense, that's product and sales and marketing, all of that. Now, for profit to be maximized, you need to minimize COGS and you need to generate more revenue, right? And that seems like a simple statement, but you may not have thought about what you're doing and what your costs and the revenue that your contributions are in that context, right? So that's why I mentioned this specifically. Okay, now there's dozens, maybe hundreds of metrics, right? But they're not all important 100% of the time. So let me just quickly go through different stages in your company maturity so you can think about which metrics you actually care about depending upon what stage you're in. Right now, there are, as you see, different types of earnings ratios or growth ratios, sort of new logos and AR, as you go along in different levels of maturity. What this is actually is sort of an S curve, but we know an S curve always looks smooth, and we know it's not really smooth, so I put some wiggles in it. And then roughly this is going to equate to these types of stages in your growth if you're VC backed, right? Now, when you're looking at those milestones, though, these are the types of metrics that you care about in these different stages, right? So you've got EBITDA in the later stages, then you've got Rule of 40, and then profitable growth. What these all have in common now is profitability, right? You do need to be profitable and you do need to grow throughout all of these stages, but you might care about some of these particular metrics more than others. You might be preparing, right? The reason why there's the overlap is because you might be preparing from one stage for the next, and you may start to look ahead and say, how do we actually look when we do these types of metrics? All right. Good. Let's move on here. So now that we have, I'm so excited that we're getting through this more quickly. So now that we have, whoops, there we go. Now that we have all of this information, how are you going to make your business case, right? Now, just to go through again what we've sort of gathered here for it. So you know who your investors are, and thus what your executive leadership cares about as well. So what your investors and executive team care about. You've identified your company goals that are in relation to what your investors care about and what your company goals are. You're connected your goals to your company goals, and then you've connected why you're scaling to these goals, right? And all of that then is going to come together to help you make your business case. So when you're making your business case, you want to think about how you contribute to revenue, how you save costs, and what that means in terms of your margins, right? And your margins are revenue minus costs is what equals margins, okay? So going back to your profit and loss statement, there's 5 ways to improve your margins, right? If you're looking at improving your margins, the most efficient way to do it is to improve your product efficiencies. I mentioned this briefly before, and I want to just re-emphasize on it, because when you think about it, all this information you're getting from your customers, you know, about like what makes it hard to use the product, if you're able to make the business case for improving those product efficiencies, it actually helps all the various metrics that you're trying to hit, right? And you can actually reduce costs of your team, right? The most expensive thing is employees, right? And if your product is efficient, right, then you don't need as many people, you don't need as many videos, you don't need as many, you know, things, because it's intuitive and they can use your product efficiently. They might be able to onboard themselves. They may be able to intuitively or with some guide in-app guides find their way around to accomplish what they need, or they might even be able to buy your product without having as many salespeople. They might be able to buy the product without a salesperson at all in some cases, right? All of those things are how you're improving your product efficiencies. You directly have an impact, however, on the next 3, right? Because you increase revenue retention, you increase subscription revenue potentially, and I'm going to dig into another way on this, and you increase your gross margin rate, right? All of these things you can have a direct impact on, and you can even make the acquisition efficiencies look better and those metrics, because you can inform your ideal customer profile so that they're not spending as much on acquisition. And as you improve all of the other areas of the P&L, and actually just without them changing a thing, will make their numbers look better and more efficient, right? So your operating profit, and that's this last orange box here, and your operating profit increases as you improve your margins. Okay, so revenue versus costs. Let's cover this, because not all revenue is created equal. As I mentioned earlier, there's one-time fees and there's recurring fees. Another thing you want to look at is your costs. What are your margins, which is revenue minus costs over revenue, right? That's how you get to your margin. And then your COGS to revenue ratio, which is COGS over revenue. And I might have mentioned here that generally investors are looking for this to be around 10%, right? Now, you might be in charge of a sliver of your CS team, right? You might be just, digital CS. So you might be thinking like, well, I'm just this part. But if you understand how this part impacts all of your team, which impacts all of your company, you can actually make a better business case. And that's because we're all in it together, right? So how you relate, whether you're a small part of it or if you're responsible for all of your CS team, how you relate it up, those building blocks, helps you make the business case. And I want you to think about this in terms of your team and your company. Going back to the P&L, right? So if you're scaling CS and you're going to reduce your costs or gain efficiencies, whether your team is in COGS or in OpEx, right? You also have an opportunity to increase your revenue or your one-time fees, right? And all of this is how you improve your margins. So I'm going to give you, actually, let me go back to what I want to give you is something to change perhaps your, we're going to get to the healthy margin too, Marissa. And so when you get to your, the other revenue, it's actually, if you can actually add in a line for recurring revenue, then you actually then would improve a number of other metrics here. So that's what I want to show you now real quick, is how to improve your subscription revenue and how to create a recurring revenue model. So here is an example, and this is where actually, if you can share the link in the chat or somewhere so that people can download this so you can follow along at home. And this is yours to go take with you. But this is an example of a recurring model. I made this up. It's a pretend company. I think of it as sort of a MarTech company that has professional services, okay? So what we have is a platinum package, gold package, and a bronze package, right? And here at the other end, this is how you get to your, whoops, I want to be sure that if that's creating a problem for you. Okay, so here is how you get to your annual revenue. You may have, so like this, like 3 levels of packages. So here's your first package, your lowest level. So you might have like self-serve onboarding, but you've increased the support level and you've added pooled CSMs. And let's say this is a MarTech company, and so you have some analytics reports that are valuable, and so they want to pay extra for that, and that's your package. Ah, there we go. Thank you so much, Reshma. Now, for the next level up package then, this is where you add in professional services, let's say, and now they have a named CSM. And then you see in the lower right corner, that's what the total cost is. And this is like, perhaps these are distributed costs, what you're seeing in terms of employee and total costs across several different packages, whatever, right? Now you're looking at a platinum package, and this is where, say, you have 24/7 support, which is valuable to some companies. And now they get this sort of annual analytics project that I made up. And so with all of that, then that's what your costs are for all of this. And so you take all those costs then and put them into a summary where you have the revenue per package, the costs and margins. And what you're going to see then is your revenue minus your cost equals your margin. And this is where, Marissa, we're going to get to the healthy margin here, right? And so when you look at that, that's how you get to the margin, and that's what your overall margin percent is. And I do this calculation in the sheet as well. Now, a healthy professional services margin, because it's going to be different than a SaaS software margin, which is usually in the 70 to 85% margin, where when it's higher involvement of people, professional services, that sort of thing. It's usually around 30%, which is why you would have it on a separate line in P&L, because they have different margins. But still, what you're looking at is a healthy margin is going to be about 30%. And in my made up company, I'm doing great. Okay. But what is the impact? So what? I've done this. Why did I do this? What's the impact of it? Right? So first I want to revisit for context what investors are looking for, right? They're looking for growth, but we've passed that growth at any cost. Now we're in profitable, enduring growth. So more specifically, what generally they're looking for is about 40% of revenue for the sales motion and about 10% of revenue for the delivery motion, right? So when you're thinking about your program, right? I want you to think about, thanks, Amanda. I want you to think about how these segments are performing in terms of revenue, costs, and margins, and how that impacts your CS program, your customers achieving their goals, and your company achieving its goals, right? And that's how you start to build your blocks, your building blocks. And that's how you can start to, when you're writing down these notes, you're like, okay, this is how I look in these margins. This is how I look in these metrics. This is what it was before. This is what it looks now that I've done this, right? This is how I'm contributing to it. That's all making your case. Christina, thank you. All right, so now that we're looking at this, I want to go back and look at the packages, right? And look at how it impacted your profit and loss statement. So when you see here is your revenue before versus your subscription revenue afterwards, because you do have it on a separate line, but what you're seeing is now you have more, you've got higher subscription revenue. So that's awesome, right? You look at your COGS, right? You're going to see that your COGS margin, your profit margins are better. But the other thing that's exciting is your operating profit is better, and it goes from negative to positive, and your net income here goes from negative to positive, right? All of that from this one change, right? And even better, this COGS ratio and sales to marketing ratio, which I calculate in the sheet there. What you see is before, it wasn't so awesome, right? Now you're in range, right? So that is a dramatic to show the impact that you're having, because you even help the sales and marketing ratio, right? And that ratio as well. So when you're looking at your lifetime, oh shoot, I'm late. Sorry, we're gonna finish right now. But the lifetime to CAC ratio improves. You can go from good to great. And if you're looking at your summary, all of these things, when you answer those questions, that's how you make your business case. And if you want to get the free guide, if you want to join my course, if you want to find out how the session ended because you had to move on to another session, totally understand. But I would be excited to answer any questions that you have. And thank you very much for joining today.
Thank you so much, Jan. We're really excited to keep continuing to learn about this, and thank you so much for the resource. And thank you so much for everyone who joined this session. We will follow up with Jan to get any answers to any questions that we didn't get to today. And we will have a recording to the session for all of this helpful information. Thank you again, Jan, for your time. And we will all speak soon.
All right, thank you.